What nobody gets is that the conditions were unusual, basically unrepeatable. I was young, full of beans. I just created beans. Cars, grassland, post-it notes, the white rhinos, everything else. Created them in an immanent sense, having replaced nothing with something which, as even my harshest critics will admit, then led to everything else, beans included. Point is, it was a first thought, best thought kind of situation. And when you create something out of nothing at such a tender age, it's just a lot to take on, psychologically. It's a lot. That's not really why I withdrew, though. I was always going to withdraw deep into myself. I understand that others do it differently, but for me, at the time, it was a principle. I found it self-evident that the thing should have its own engine, its own life, its own propulsion. It wasn't a theoretical pose, it was something I felt at a gut level. I still feel that way, really, because otherwise where's the risk? You can't be in every household sitting at a person's shoulder asking, so what do you think of what I did there or here? Does that work for you? Can I do anything to improve your experience? I mean, you can, but you're in a hiding to nothing. No matter what anybody tells you, the underlying principle is not consumer satisfaction. There's no feedback loop. You make it, you put it out there, you deal with the consequences. A lot of the times, they're going to hate it and hate you for creating it, but if you can't deal with hatred, you've got no business being in the game in the first place. Having said that, there are a lot of things in there that I simply wouldn't do now, or not in the same way if I had the opportunity to do it all again, from scratch. I'll be the first to admit that. When you're young, you try and prove you can do it all, anything. You throw everything in the kitchen sink in there. You're profligate. You've got this sense of unlimited potential. You think you contain multitudes, and in my experience, you kind of do at that age. Because you're still sufficiently flexible to contain multitudes. You haven't drawn lines around your shit yet, and there's still something ineffable about you. Something that can make space for whatever is not you. But that crowd inside thins out. Lord, does it thin out. For example, yesterday I was mooching around in my long johns when I had a thought. I wondered, what does it feel like to be a bat? Now that sort of thing used to be a fruitful line of imaginative inquiry for me. But I didn't know yesterday, and I still don't know. And I've made my peace with it. I don't expect to know how a bat feels about anything anytime soon. But I know how I feel. That's what you're left with in the end. A very precise and intricate sense of how you yourself feel. Which is not nothing. When I started out, I had no earthly idea about that. Now I know. People talk about checking back in and maybe reworking some things and adapting others and so on and so forth, but those people do not know my mind. They do not know what I can face and what I find too much to deal with at the current time. Only I can know that. It might sound a little nuts coming from me, but a lot of people can do with being a lot less judgmental. Sometimes I'm asked, how do you keep from getting depressed, given the state of things, given that it looks like the something you got started is on the brink of collapsing back into nothing? The answer has changed over time. I used to think parallel projects were the solution. Just keep on creating parallel projects and moving between them, and then you never have time to get really down on any one of them. Okay, sure, that's a broiling mess, but this one has got something. Oh, it's really got something. Of course, as soon as I felt one of these parallel projects was going well, a moment later, I'd hate it and want to move on to the next thing, which would then provide its own complications and so on. And all the time, some part of me understood that dropping one ball was a problem unlikely to be resolved by simply launching a whole load of other balls into the air. But for a while, it worked. Psychologically, for me, I can't speak for others. To me, it was beautiful to move between these parallel projects. Never getting bogged down, not feeling defined by one way of doing things, feeling light, feeling free. Doesn't mean it wasn't avoidant behaviour. I'm not a fool. I know when I'm being avoidant, but some of the most sublime things emerge as vehicles of distraction. Really depends on how you look at it. These days I love a fragment. I don't think of a fragment as flawed or partial in any way. It's the completist model that got me in such trouble in the first place. Now I praise the half done, the unfinished, the broken, the shard. Who am I to turn my back on the fragment? Who am I to say the fragment is insufficient? At the same time, I am depressed. The difference is these days I just say it out loud. I am depressed. At a certain point, given the way things are, it's a fair and rational response. The fact that I even have to defend the emotion tells you all you need to know about how large the distance has become between my mind and all other minds. It's really an issue. Mostly when people talk to me about what they think and feel about it all and their own relation to me or all of it, I willingly participate, as in I will, and do listen, but I remain keenly aware that in practical terms, 9 times out of 10, we are not discussing or thinking about the same entity in any way, shape or form. On the one hand, I feel totally alienated by their interpretations. On the other, they find my perspective impossible to identify, never mind actually engage with. We're talking straight past each other. Have been for the longest time. Which is legitimately depressing. A word, by the way, that is not mine and which I hate to use and only sound out now so as to be able to know you all better and to share in your reality. Contrary to reports, naming things was not and never will be my bag. I myself never put things in bags. I barely recognise the existence of bags, at least not as a collective noun. Nor would I ever, for example, have thought up the separate denomination animal, and then treated it as if it were a licence. No more than I would ever have presumed to describe a category called emotions or consider them as something you have, like a stone or a stereo, and then go on to define them morally, depending on what they did to my face muscles or tear ducts. That shit is not on me. Yet I still have to deal with people speaking to me as if all that is reality. I have to at least appear to take it seriously. And I'm sure that behaving in this false way, in such bad faith, day in, day out, is what has inhibited me somewhat and contributed to this sense of blockage. It doesn't make me want to take new risks, that's what I'm sure, or start afresh with something big. To what end? Everything gets twisted. Control is an illusion. I certainly have never personally drawn a line around France, but at a certain point, when you've got this critical mass of belief in France, on the part of those who believe they are citizens of France, and indeed separate entities each from the other, well, what are you going to do about it? Tell them to take another look. Pardon, monsieur, madame, le monde n'est pas ce que vous pensez, please. People see what they want to see. Instead of self-medicating, I recently got involved with a dog. Judge that however you may wish, but I'll tell you right now, I've never been happier. I no longer feel any anxiety as I pass by what I don't want to go back to, because each day I have a purpose. a direction. I really know what I'm doing. I've got to take dear old Butler for a walk, let him sniff all the things he likes to sniff without hurrying him or shivving him along in any way at all. That takes up half the day. And when me and Butler are done, there's even a little time to flit through the parallel projects, never finishing any one of them, never raising any to the level of perfection, but feeling okay about all of them, never delighted nor desperate. It's a life. I'll take it. There aren't many who do what I do, but whenever I happen to come across a significant colleague, not any of the hacks, but one of the few I admire and, more importantly, whom I like, whenever I happen to run into one of these esteemed colleagues, maybe at the deli on Mercer, and we stop and greet each other, and they see me with Butler, I know very well what they're thinking. Me, who used to be so high and mighty, shuffling round the neighbourhood with this dumb-looking coonhound. What the hell happened? Well, they can think what they like. I'm just very, very happy, waiting patiently for this old dog to sniff the many things it likes to sniff, while my colleague smiles at me in that certain way, like there's something satirical about me now. I actually have a sense of humour, and I understand how funny it must look, me, with a dog. It's really a bad joke on myself, given that I once thought, when dogs initially appeared on the scene, that this time I had really managed to inadvertently offer to the people a revelatory illumination, a deep and renewing insight into the true nature of reality, when of course the exact opposite lesson is what they all seem to have taken from it. That's my dog, you hear them announcing, pulling their leashes tight, with that smug look of ownership on their stupid faces. Yeah, sure you can pet my dog. There's no control, none whatsoever. I don't worry. I've let it all go. I'm happy. I get to spend my days with a fantastic dog. I'm no longer concerned with whether or not I'm the only soul left in existence who knows what a dog means or what it is for. Just going to go back a bit.
Don't tap that chair.
It's really a bad joke on myself, given that I once thought, when dogs initially appeared on the scene, that this time I had really managed to, inadvertently, offer to the people a revelatory illumination, a deep and renewing insight into the true nature of reality, when of course the exact opposite lesson is what they all seem to have taken from it. That's my dog, you hear them announcing, pulling their leashes tight, with that smug look of ownership on their stupid faces. Yeah, sure, you can pet my dog. There's no control, none whatsoever. I don't worry. I've let it all go. I'm happy. I get to spend my days with a fantastic dog. I am no longer concerned whether or not I am the only soul left in existence who knows what a dog means and what it is for.